Please be seated. The court is now back in session. The floor is once again given to the prosecutors to put a question to this witness. You are reminded that the time allocated for the prosecution and the civil parties is 1 day. You may now proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning to everybody. Good morning, Mr. Witness. My name is Dale Lysak, and I'm one of the international prosecutors, and I have a few questions for you as well. I would like to start by going back to I have a few follow-up questions regarding matters that were discussed earlier this morning. First, I want to go back to the period in 1975 when you joined the Samrong District Army and then later were promoted to the Sector 33 Army. And you indicated that the war was over at that time. What I would like to ask you is whether you can describe what your tasks were as an ordinary combatant in the Samrong District and Sector 33 armies in 1975.
When the war ended, the Samrong District Army, similarly to the condition of the Sector 33 Army, was that we assisted the people to dig canals and to build dams with the people in the sector. I personally involved in the work with the people after the conclusion of the war.
Thank you. The second follow-up area that I wanted to ask you about, and this is again during the period while you were in Kong Pasay or Samrong District following April 1975. Can you tell us whether you were aware of any efforts made to identify evacuees who were connected to the Lon Nol regime, people who were Lon Nol soldiers or officials of the Lon Nol government? When evacuees arrived in Kong Pasay District, was there any effort made to identify such people?
I did not know nothing at all about this matter. My work was different. I was a combatant. As for the matters regarding evacuees from Phnom Penh, it was to be dealt with by the base cadres, particularly the village chiefs or the sub-district chiefs. I was a combatant, and after the war ended in 1975, I helped build dams during the initial few months. We built dams together with the people in the district. That's all I knew.
The third area that I want to follow up from this morning, you indicated that you remembered some of the people who worked in the first layer or inside unit at K1. Can you tell us the names of the people you remember who worked at the first layer at K1?
I can recall some of those names, namely Horn. He was part of the first layer. The second individual was Sun. And the third one was Prun. And the fourth one, I cannot actually recall other names amongst those 10 guards. I can only recall these names.
Mr. President, I'd like to, at this time, show the witness a additional document. It is document E3/858. This is a document that he was shown during his interview by OCAJ and asked some questions on there. And I would like to pose a few questions to him on this document also, if I may provide it to the witness, and also we'll show it on the screen.
President, yes, you may proceed. Court officer, could you deliver the document from the prosecutor for the witness examination?
Mr. Witness, this was a document that you were shown at the end of your interview with OCIJ. You've already provided a lot of information regarding the people from the K units that are listed in this document, and I don't want to repeat that information that is already in your interview. You did also affirm in your interview at the very end that as far as you knew, the information about K1 and K3 in this document is probably correct. I want to direct you to two parts of the document, if I can. The first part is the very first page. And that is the Khmer page 000021153. And in particular, there is a list of 16 people under the title K1. What I would like to ask you is whether some or all of the people who are in this list of 16 people, were guards who worked in the first layer inside K1, or whether this is a list of people from both the first and second layer of K1.
The list of the 16 people, they worked in the first layer, and the names are correct. Identifying those who worked in the first layer, it's been for so long and I cannot recall the name exactly, but when I see this document, the memory comes back. They worked in the first layer, that is the 16 of them.
And the second part of the document that I would like you to look at is on Khmer page 0002160, and the corresponding English page is 00391-735. And on this page, there is a list of 18 people that is titled K1 Outside Uncle's House. And my question for you is whether the 18 people who are on this list were people who were part of the second layer protection team at K1.
Please allow me the time to read through the names on the list. Response. Upon reviewing this document, I agree that all the people listed were part of the second layer. However, I do not know about their whereabouts these days.
Thank you for that response. The person listed number 13 on this list that you've identified as the second layer. Number 13 is a person named Song. Was this you? Was this an alias you used during the Khmer Rouge period?
I think so, because there is no other individual listed here under the name of a song.
Thank you, Mr. Witness. That's all the questions I have on this document for now. Let me turn to one more follow-up area from this morning. You talked about your duties as part of the protection team at K1. And you've also talked about meetings that were held, political meetings and self-criticism meetings. During any of these meetings, were you ever informed of possible security threats relating to K1? Concerns that there were enemies who may try to attack the leaders at K1?
Yes, there were concerns. In our protection team, at the second layer, it is our concerns that we have to provide a better protection, and of course with such a concern then we would be vigilant in providing a better protection. We have to grasp the situation surrounding K1 office. Although nothing happened, the concerns remained a major alert for all of us.
You just indicated that there were nothing happened, I think was how it was translated. Can you tell us, were there ever any security incidents in which people tried to attack K1 during the time you worked there?
There was no attempted attack on Office K1 during the time that I worked there. I did not witness any of such attempt.
Thank you, Mr. Witness. I'd like to turn now to the subject of trips that were made to the provinces. In your OCIJ interview, you made the following statement, quote, "I saw the uncles going down to the grassroots in the countryside occasionally, as with Pol Pot, Ieng Sary, and Nuon Chea. With Khieu Samphan, going to the provinces was less frequent." End of quote. This is a quote that appears in your OCIJ interview E3/104 at Khmer page 00204051, English page 00204060, and French page 00524372. My first question is, can you explain to us how you were aware that the uncles made trips to the provinces?
I knew through my superiors, for example through thought, as some of the bodyguards or the guards were assigned to escort those people, and I knew through such means.
And my colleague asked you earlier to identify people that you remember who worked as drivers for the uncles. Were the same people who you identified earlier the drivers who took the uncles to the provinces?
To my knowledge, they were the same drivers.
Are you able to tell us how often Nuon Chea and Ieng Sary went to the provinces?
I only knew some of their trips. Sometimes I didn't know about their trips. But as far as I knew, it was not that frequent based on what I knew. It is possible that they made frequent trips to which I did not have the knowledge of, because I only knew some of the trips they made, and it's possible that they made other trips that I did not know of.
Did you know any of the details of where the uncles went on these trips?
Mr. President, is the question regarding their trips to the countryside? I need the question to be more specific. Is it the time that they started their trip to go to the countryside and meeting people there?
Yes, Mr. Witness, I'm asking about the occasions when the uncles went to the countryside. Do you know any of the details of where they went or what they did on those trips?
I did not know that well regarding this matter, as I personally did not go to the countryside as some of us did. I personally only stationed in one place during the 3 years regime.
And you stated in your OCIJ interview that Kusampan also went to the provinces, but that he went less frequently than the other uncles. How do you know that Kusampan's trips to the provinces were less frequent than the other uncles?
It was based on my personal conclusion. I was not sure whether it was accurate or not. It was based on my observation of him coming and going through K1. So I conclude that he did not go to the provinces that often. And sometimes I learned through the bodyguards that he did not go to the provinces that often. Once again, it is my personal conclusion.
You mentioned a few minutes ago that you only knew of some of the trips. Is that also the case with Kusampan? Were you aware of every occasion that he went to the countryside, or only some of the occasions?
As I stated earlier, it was my personal conclusion, and based on his activities that I observed, he did not have opportunity to go down to the countryside as often as other uncles, as he was busy working in the city. It is, however, possible that he could have gone to the provinces, though less often than the other uncles, because I myself did not provide a direct protection for him. So what I stated was my personal conclusion based on my observation.
You just stated that Kusampan was busy working in the city. What type of work was Kusampan doing that you were aware of?
knew that he held a role. Of course, every Cambodian knew he was the president of the state presidium back then. So I conclude that he did not have to make any direct contacts with the countryside that often. However, I could not attach to the fact that he was too busy in his role in Phnom Penh. But it is my conclusion and based on my observation that he was busy working in the city, although I did not know exactly the nature of his role or duties in the city. I observed him coming and going to work often at K1.
In regards to the issue of living conditions in the countryside, in your OCIJ statement, you stated that you listened to the radio during the DK period, but that the radio broadcasts, quote, talked only about the good points, like the putting up of dams and the digging of feeder canals. And I'm quoting from page Khmer 00204052, English 00204061, and French 00524373. My first question is, can you tell us where it was that you were able to listen to the radio?
Regarding listening to the radio and the information that I received was that I usually listened to the radio when it was broadcast. Most of the time I listened to the radio.
My question was, where was it that you were able to listen to the radio? Was it at the K1 compound, or was it some other location?
Except while I was on guard duties, I would listen to the radio, and it was at the K1 compound. But I did not listen to the radio while I was on guard duty. That would be against the discipline. That we had to concentrate on our guard duty and not anything else. And while I was off guard, then I listened to the radio. I also listened to the radio at night.
And the radio broadcasts that you listened to, that you indicated only talked about good things, were these broadcasts of the Democratic Kampuchea government?
Yes, the broadcast was from Phnom Penh, and the broadcast never said any bad thing about the regime at all. It was about building dams, digging canals, etc. Mostly I heard about all that. There were other broadcasts, there were other contents of the broadcast as well, but it's been so long already and I could not recall them. However, I knew that the broadcast did not say anything bad about the regime at all.
You were asked in your OCIJ interview whether your superiors knew about the living conditions of the people, and you responded as follows, that this is a quote from Khmer page 00204052 through 204053, English page 00204061, and French page 00524374. You made the following statement, quote, "The TAN and SOT protection teams may not have been aware, as all they knew about was going all out to do protection. And I heard TAN, SOT, and those returning from the provinces saying that the people in this and that province were eating well and sufficiently. As for those at echelons higher than TAN and SOT, I do not know to what extent they knew, because I never participated in meetings with them." End of quote. Can you tell us, Mr. Witness, where it was that you heard TAN and SOT talking about their trips to the provinces?
I cannot recall the time. However, when or after they returned from escorting the leadership, he talked about what he saw while he was at the countryside or at the bases. He said that the people at the base had sufficient food to eat. He told us who did not go. As for other matters, maybe they had other matters or experiences, but they did not tell us, and that's all what they told us.
Mr. President, I'd like to ask the witness now about a statement from the interview of SOT regarding this subject of his trips to the provinces. This is document E3464. As the court may be aware, SOT is deceased, so he will not be a witness in these proceedings. Our practice before is that we have been allowed to make use of statements from witnesses or witnesses who will not be testifying in the courtroom. And I would like to put a question to the witness related to something that SOT indicated on the issue of trips, his trips to the provinces.
President, yes, you may proceed.
Mr. President, I can present a copy of the document to the witness and show it on the screen with your leave.
Yes, you may proceed. Court officer, could you deliver the document from the prosecutor for the witness examination?
The excerpt I would like to ask you about, Mr. Witness, is at Khmer page 00204742. It is at English page 00226, 110, and at French ERN 00503-949. And at that part of his interview, Sot made the following statement, quote, "I often drove the uncles to the provinces, and I also drove the foreign guests to the provinces. I saw people having a decent living standard, a decent food. But I heard from the olds that there was a lack of food, clothes, household goods, medicines, and that some people died from hunger." Continuing on later in that same answer, quote, "I took Nunchea to the provinces of Preveng, Sveiring, Siem Reap, Kampot, Battambang, Kampong Som, Takeo, Krachi, and Stung Treng to meet with the cadres and the soldier chiefs in order to disseminate and educate them the party policy." And then at the end of this paragraph, Sot stated, quote, "He also went down to see the dam sites very often, about 5 to 6 times per month. Nunchea saw the hardship of and the destitute of the people." End of quote. Now, you have talked about how the Democratic Kampuchea radio only broadcast about good points. My first question to you is whether you know whether Sot was ordered by his superiors not to discuss bad conditions and bad things that he saw on his trips to the provinces.
Response. I'm afraid I don't know about this. However, every time he returned, the other people who accompanied the uncle would talk to us that people had decent food. And not only one person who would tell me about this. Every one of the bodyguards would share the same opinion. And frankly speaking, I did not know whether people had difficulties with their food supplies or not, because this is only what I heard from them, and I did not see what actually happened.
During the Democratic Kampuchea regime, were people free to criticize the policies of the government and to say, point out negative things about the regime?
Response. I believe I know very little about the policy back then, because I worked briefly at various locations. By early 1976, I already started working at K1. And to respond to your question, I don't know whether people were free to say any negative points. I was very young. I was about 17 or 18 years old. I was a boy who were excited, who liked to play. and I was less interested in politics, and for that I did not know much about this.
You've indicated that you attended political education sessions as well as self-criticism meetings. During the criticism meetings, were there any occasions where people were criticized for saying negative things about either communist policy or the DK government?
Response. As stated earlier, self-criticism sessions were regular, and that people would be allowed to criticize one another and put ourselves for criticism. Our subordinates were allowed to also criticize their superiors, and their superiors, on the other way around, could also criticize their subordinates. However, when it comes to the rights to contest, such rights were not pronounced or informed to anyone in the meeting. So I can say that during each and every self-criticism meeting, we were allowed to talk only about our livelihood, our guard duties, and how we had to be vigilant and be very careful during the time when we were on duty, and we were encouraged to raise some animals, chickens, and plant vegetable. That's part of the subject of the meetings.
Thank you for your response. I'd like to ask you now a few questions regarding the authority structure at K1. In your OCIJ interview, and this is at page Khmer 0020 4052, English page 00204060, and French page 00524373. You made the following statement at that part of your interview, quote, Tan and Sot took their orders from Pol Pot and Noon Chea, whereas Q Sampan did not arrange the tasks, end of quote. Later in the interview, and this is at page Khmer 00204054, English 00204062, and French 00524-375. Later in this interview, you made the following statement, quote, Ken, alias Lin, was the supervisor above Tan and Sot and was the responsible for K1 and K3. Pong held the post of chairman of 870 before Ken, alias Lin. And I wanted to give you a chance here to clarify what knowledge you had as to whether Tan and Sot received their orders from Pong and later from Ken, alias Lin, when he replaced Pong, or whether Tan and Sot received their orders from Pol Pot and Noon Chea.
Response. I received, or people received these tasks at all sections, and sometimes they received order directly from Pol Pot and Nuon Chea, and on some occasions from Can and Lin. This is how the work was done. So the instructions were not necessarily rendered from Pong and Lin. Sometimes the orders or instructions were rendered directly from the top.
Were there occasions where you received orders directly from the top, from Pol Pot or Nuon Chea?
Response. During this period of time, I had never received direct orders or instructions from these people.
Can you tell us whether you were ever present when Pol Pot, Nuon Chea, or Khieu Samphan gave orders to anyone?
Response. No, I wasn't.
Did you ever participate in any meetings with Pol Pot, Nuon Chea, or Khieu Samphan?
Response. No, I didn't. I never attended any meeting with them.
If you can look again at the interview of Sot that I gave you a couple minutes ago, which is document E3/464, I want to ask you about an excerpt from Khmer page 00204741 through 204742. And this is English page 00226110 and French page 00503948. And in that part of his interview, Tassot states that his superior was Pong, and that, quote, Pong received the joint order from all uncles, such as Pol Pot, Ieng Sary, Khieu Samphan, Nuon Chea, in accordance with their expertise, tasks, and directions. Continuing later in that same paragraph, Sot stated, quote, Pong used to meet with Khieu Samphan at K3, and Khieu Samphan used to meet Pong at K7. End of quote. My first question to you is whether you have any information or any reason to dispute Sot's statement that Pong received joint orders from all the uncles, including Nuon Chea, Ieng Sary, and Khieu Samphan.
Response. I believe that he could have received orders from Pol Pot and Nuon Chea. The reason that I said so because he worked closely with them. And I still am convinced that orders could have been rendered from them to him. However, I cannot say whether they met with Pong and how many times such orders or instructions could have been made, because when Pong did not tell me anything about his encounter with them.
And in regards to the statement by Sot that Pong used to meet with Khieu Samphan at K3 and Khieu Samphan used to meet Pong at K7, you've already told us that you never went to K3. Do you know what K7 was, and did you ever go there?
Response. As stated earlier, I stayed at the office, and I only on one occasion took Pol Pot to Borei Kaila. I never knew K3, and I never knew K7 because I had never been there during the time.
Did you ever hear of the K7 office?
Response. Yes, I did. I heard of K7.
And what was it that you heard about K7?
Response. I didn't hear anything other than the existence of K7 and other K officers, and I am familiar or remember having heard about this, although I did not actually know what K7 was about or what its function was.
I'd like now to direct you to another part of your OCIJ interview that I would like you to clarify. And the first section is at Khmer ERN 00204052, English 00204060, and French 00524373, and this is your OCIJ interview document E3/104. And on that page you made the following statement, quote, "As for those who made more serious mistakes, such as insubordination or wandering around freely for the fun of it, they were sent to work in the ministry's offices and factories in Phnom Penh and were never sent to prison or killed." End of quote. However, later in your interview, if you could turn to pages Khmer 00204053 through 204054, and this is English page 00204062 and French page 00524375. In this part of your interview, you identify 3 cadres who were accused of treason, arrested, and who disappeared. One, a person named Sem, who you identify as the chairman of K1 before Tan. Second, Pong, a person who was the chairman of 870. And third, a friend of Pong named Yon, who was located in the K1 Interior Protection Team. Is it correct that some cadres who were accused of serious mistakes, such as Sem, Pong, and Yon, were in fact arrested and sent to prison?
Response. I already stated in my interview in December 2007 at my home already that I know that Sam disappeared from K1 office. 2 months later, I heard that he was a traitor. I didn't say that the information was true, but I didn't see him. He disappeared. By 1976, when I came, he was there, but about a year later, he was no longer to be seen. Pang was also disappearing, and Pang would come to K1 very often because he was overly in charge of that office. I did not see him again. And like Sam, he was accused of being a traitor. I have no idea where he could have been detained, on which date, and who made such arrest. I just didn't see him for a while, and later on I heard from others who said that they were accused of being traitors. It was a kind of routines already, like during that time when someone disappeared, and then later on we would hear that they had disappeared because they had been accused of being the traitors. And it was a kind of situation that another person who often seen bringing food, chicken to these uncles, but then on some given occasion then you would never see him or her again, and later on we were told that he or she was arrested.
And in regards to Sem, you indicated in the same part of your OCIJ interview that you heard or that it was announced that Sem had committed treason by Tan. Can you tell us what was the occasion where Tan announced that Sem, the former head of K1, had committed treason?
Response. There was no ceremony to announce such a statement. We just heard from one another that Sam disappeared and was accused of committing treason. And such announcement would not be made in a kind of formal meeting. We just heard from one another, not through a formal meeting.
Thank you for clarifying that. You've talked about attending political education sessions. At these sessions, did your superiors ever talk about the problem of internal enemies and encourage you to be vigilant, looking for CIA, KGB, or WAN enemies who may have infiltrated democratic Kampuchea?
Response. Well, during each meeting, whether it is a small or big meeting, the chairperson of the meeting would not talk more specifically on the investigation of the enemies, internal enemies, the KGB or CIA agents or the UN enemies, like that. I don't remember having heard anything mentioned about this in the meeting, or perhaps it was a long time ago that I cannot recollect everything very well. But the main focus of the sessions were about the work, about our vigilance in helping protect our leaders, make sure that we perform our tasks very well, and content of enemies or subject like that was not discussed in any of the meetings I attended.
You've talked about Sem and Hong. Can you tell us who Yon was and how you learned of his disappearance?
Response. Yon worked on the inside, and I noted that people who work at the economic section, mainly people who prepared food for uncles, so Yon was overly in charge of transporting vegetables and foods to the uncles. And at that time, we normally or rarely saw vegetables being transported from the outside into the compound, because we were self-sufficient. We grew our own vegetables and raised the domestic animals for food, and these vegetables and food would be brought to uncles from the inside. And later on, John, like Pang, disappeared, and we similarly heard that he was accused of committing treason.
Were Pang and Yon close? Were they friends?
Response. I cannot say whether they were friends or close, but they both were overly in charge of the work, and we treated them as our superiors who were very close to us, their subordinates. but I can't say exactly whether these two individuals were friends or close to one another.
Did Pong and Yon disappear around the same time?
Response: yes, they did.
For the record, Mr. President, S-21 prisoner list E3/1654 at the Khmer page 000398330, English page 00234-239, records that Ne Mong, alias Yon, who is identified as a combatant in the Angkar Defense Unit, entered S-21 on the 5th of April, 1978. In addition, on the OCP revised S-21 prisoner list, the document E3/342, prisoner number 3391 is Ket Tor, alias Sem, who is identified as the Chief of Office K1. In relation to arrests, Mr. Witness, do you know who in the CPK or DK hierarchy had the authority to order the arrests of cadres like Sem, Pong, and Yon? Was this something that Tan or Sot could decide, or did it require the approval of a higher echelon?
Response: I don't know about this. I do not know how decision was made before someone disappeared. What I learned was that the people disappeared suddenly, and to my understanding, before any arrest was made, no one could be informed, and I did not even know how many times a person need to be tempered before he or she was subjected to the arrest. The President: thank you, Mr. Co-Prosecutor. It is now appropriate time for lunch adjournment. The chamber will adjourn until 1:30 p.m. Court officer is now instructed to assist the witness during the adjournment and make sure that he is returned to the courtroom by 1:30 p.m. when the next session resumes. Security personnel are now instructed to bring Mr. Kilsumpon to his holding cell and have him return to the courtroom in the afternoon session at 1:30 p.m. The court is adjourned.